Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, through Diablo and Rimuru's discussion, we learned about Feldway's true power, which could rival that of true dragons, making him one of the strongest beings in existence. Diablo further speculated that Feldway's target was Masayuki. Diablo's guess was correct, but Michael and Feldway planned to escalate the war all over the Central World, making the situation more complex than anticipated. In this episode, we will shift our focus to the Ingrassia kingdom and the barren land to witness the outbreak of war in these regions. Let's get started. 2 days later, the World Conference commenced. Rimuru stayed behind to guard the Monster Federation, while Rimuru was accompanied by Ranga and Sue as guards, and Diablo as his secretary. With Diablo present, Rimuru felt confident that even if Feldway attacked, they would be able to handle the situation. Rimuru eagerly walked toward the conference venue and immediately spotted the main character of this meeting, Emperor Masayuki. A few months ago, after Rimuru evolved into the fifth true dragon, he had grown tall enough to see eye to eye with Masayuki. However, in just a few months of not seeing each other, Masayuki had grown even taller, restoring the height difference between them to its previous state. Masayuki cheerfully remarked that he had grown quite a bit as well. Upon closer inspection, Rimuru noticed that Masayuki's hair had also turned a dazzling gold. Previously, Rimuru thought Feldway's concern about Masayuki being Rudra's reincarnation was overthinking, but now it seemed that concern wasn't unfounded. However, to Rimuru, Masayuki was always Masayuki, and whether he was Rudra's reincarnation was entirely unimportant. The two then entered the venue together, and in an instant, the circular hall fell silent, with all eyes focused on Rimuru and Masayuki. Unlike before, Masayuki showed no signs of panic. Rimuru couldn't help but admire how Masayuki had grown capable of standing on his own. Masayuki remarked that when he ascended to the throne in the Empire, there were countless people under his gaze. The experience of making his accession declaration from the castle's terrace had greatly contributed to Masayuki's growth. Beside Masayuki, Velgrain nostalgically reminisced about that moment, expressing her love and admiration for Masayuki, saying he was truly wonderful. With that, Rimuru and Masayuki took their seats in the front row. On the stage, the Western Council's representative, TenSura, began speaking. Everything was prepared, and the historical reconciliation between the Western nations and the Eastern Empire was set to proceed smoothly, provided no one caused any disruptions. This undoubtedly violated that truth: whenever a flag is raised, things often go awry. A flag in Japanese anime is an event or occurrence that signifies something will happen later on in the story. However, Rimuru didn't notice this and simply waited quietly for the meeting to begin. Switching perspectives to the underground maze of Ingrassia, this massive maze had been painstakingly excavated over centuries as a defensive measure against the Angelic Legion's invasion. It was a complex network of hidden passages where one could easily get lost. However, this was just the surface. Deeper within lay a secret location known to only a few, an evil research facility kept hidden from the world. This facility was overseen by the Magical Inquisitors, and their research focused on injecting monster factors into the human body. The researchers had already achieved many notable results, such as muscle strength 10 times that of an average person, skin tougher than steel, and bones that could support these enhanced features. Nevertheless, the king of Ingrassia believed these advancements fell short of the extraordinary powers of the demon lords. The researchers aimed to acquire even more powerful physiques through direct human modification, hoping to rival the magic beasts developed by the Eastern Empire. They believed that directly enhancing the human body was more efficient than controlling synthetic beasts, so they persisted in conducting these forbidden experiments, despite not yet achieving satisfactory results. In fact, the researchers had indeed managed to extract a certain degree of monster factors, significantly enhancing the reinforcement rate and continuously upgrading it. However, the primary issue that surfaced was the mental fragility of the test subjects, who could not withstand the monster factors. Consequently, the The researchers believed it would be better to directly create sufficiently powerful bodies and allow demons to inhabit them, as demons were relatively easier to capture, making the acquisition of demonic power the most effective method. By capturing weakened demons from northern conflicts and analyzing their composition, the researchers discovered that demons transformed human bodies to adapt to magic through the erosion of human cells by magicules. However, they were unaware that this mechanism only occurred under the dominance of the demon's will. If humans forcibly absorbed demonic power, it would only poison their bodies. Therefore, this was destined to be an unsuccessful experiment. Additionally, the researchers overlooked the importance of willpower, mistakenly believing that merely strengthening the body was sufficient. By cultivating demonic body cells and injecting factors into the test subjects, they thought the subjects could also gain demonic power. But in reality, cells without willpower would only become toxins, eroding the test subjects and rendering the experiment a failure, subjecting them to hellish suffering. As a result, most of the test subjects were orphans, slaves, and criminals, groups that could be discarded without anyone caring. Among these test subjects was Reiner, the former captain of the Ingrassia Royal Guard, who appeared in our episode 20. During the last Western Council, Reiner, along with Ingrassia's first Prince Elric, clashed with Rimuru and Hinata. After being easily subdued by Hinata, he was accused of treason and ultimately became material for the experiments. The reason he hadn't broken down yet was his deep-seated hatred for Rimuru and Hinata. Although he endured immense suffering, Reiner's body had indeed been significantly enhanced due to the experiments. Despite his intense resentment and desire for revenge, he was unable to escape this hell on earth. However, after enduring a long period of experimentation, an unexpected glimmer of hope appeared. Feldway and Vega altered Reiner's fate. Feldway's target was naturally Masayuki, who was attending the World Conference, but he also had to be wary of Rimuru, who was also participating in the conference. Therefore, Feldway decided to proceed with caution and adapt as needed. For this reason, they did not choose to force their way into the capital but instead heeded Vega's suggestion to use a hidden path. This move turned out to be fortuitous. One of the exits of the underground maze was located in the forest on the outskirts of Ingrassia's capital. By entering through there, they could bypass the barrier protecting the capital and easily infiltrate it. Their luck didn't end there. Since Vega had once been a subject of the secret Ingrassia laboratory, he knew the place inside out and quickly discovered that the secret research facility was still operational. They soon found the people being used as test subjects. Vega, feeling nostalgic, unexpectedly greeted the imprisoned Reiner, and their shared experiences quickly earned Reiner's trust. For Reiner, trusting Vega was the only way to change his miserable fate. Feldway allowed Vega to take full control, giving him complete command over the situation. Reiner pleaded with Vega to save him, offering his and his men's absolute loyalty in return. Vega easily broke the bars of the cell, releasing Reiner and the others. When Reiner saw the corpses of several magic interrogators lying behind Vega, his face turned pale. The powerful hidden forces of Ingrassia, which even he couldn't handle, were powerless before Vega. Realizing that Vega was a truly formidable monster, Reiner instantly felt relieved, convinced that he had made the right gamble. He explained that everyone imprisoned there was his subordinate, and that they would undoubtedly choose to follow Vega. Thus, Feldway and Vega not only managed to infiltrate the capital of Ingrassia undetected but also inexplicably gained hundreds of warriors. Vega declared that he would cause chaos in the Ingrassia capital, a plan that Reiner wholeheartedly welcomed. He and his men harbored deep resentment toward the country, seeing this as the perfect opportunity for revenge. Feldway encouraged this plan, stating that he would grant these men power. Feldway commanded Furuki to transfer 100 phantom warriors from Jahil. Thus, in this secret facility, Reiner and his men began their embodiment ritual. The side with the stronger will would gain control of the body. Fueled by his deep-seated hatred, Reiner seized control of the body and gained the power of the phantom. Reiner expressed his gratitude to Feldway and Vega, stating that they had not only saved him and his men but also bestowed upon them immense strength. To further empower him, Vega gifted Reiner the mythical equipment he had obtained from consuming Orcaria. With the power of the Phantom, Reiner's existence points had already surpassed 1 million, and with the addition of the mythical equipment, it further increased to 2 million. The rest of his men had existence points ranging from 200,000 to 500,000. Both Vega and Feldway nodded in satisfaction. Feldway smiled slightly as he watched this group of warriors confidently charge towards the capital above. Shifting our perspective to the barren land Damargania, the moment Michael and Feldway's plan was set in motion, Fen launched the first attack without hesitation. He delivered a powerful blow to Degruel's territory, successfully drawing everyone's attention. Assisting Fen in this assault were Jahil, Leon, Dino, Pico, and Ingrassia. Zalerio monitored the situation from a higher altitude, keeping an eye on everything and ready to counter any actions from Luminous. Feeling the tremor from this strike, Primordial Purple Ultima sensed trouble. As one of the oldest beings, Ultima recognized the presence of a destructive force from ancient times. Two of her subordinates, knowing their master's concern, immediately took action. Veyron quickly set out to confirm the situation at Degruel's location, while Zonda, following Ultima's orders, tried to contact Beretta from the Labyrinth headquarters. The aim was for Beretta to pass the information to Xian, who was currently with Luminous. Ultima knew that if the barren land fell, the next target would undoubtedly be the Holy Empire Rubrios. However, Zonda found that the magic in this area had been sealed, and all means of communication were disrupted. But there were contingency plans in place. After the attack on Leon's Golden City last time, Rimuru had listed emergency measures requiring each country's contact point to check in with Labyrinth headquarters every 5 minutes. If contact was lost, it would be recognized within 5 minutes as an abnormal situation. Despite this, Ultima believed that wasting any time could be dangerous, so Zonda immediately carried out the orders and sped away on the wind. Ultima stood up, biting her finger, and contemplated the worst-case scenario. Given the ominous feeling she had, escape plans had to be considered in advance, although she hated thinking this way. It wasn't only that the incoming enemies were particularly difficult to handle, rather, Ultima was concerned about Degruel. Ultima believed that although Rimuru-sama trusted Degruel, he still harbored some doubts. Rimuru might appear harmless, but in reality, he was very cunning. From Ultima's perspective, Rimuru-sama's meticulous nature was something to be admired. Ultima recalled that Rimuru had once casually muttered something, pondering why Degruel, after learning about the enemy's situation at Valpurgis, had still requested Storm Dragon Veldora for support instead of Ultima. Even though Ultima had already reached barren land to provide support, Degruel insisted on having Veldora to help resist the enemy. While Degruel claimed it was because he was good friends with Veldora and didn't like Primordial Purple's nasty personality, the situation seemed more complex. Considering Michael's interest in acquiring Veldora's dragon factor, Degruel couldn't have been unaware of the significance of this matter. After hearing Rimuru-sama's mutterings, Ultima discreetly investigated Degruel from various angles. Ultimately, she reached the same conclusion as Rimuru: the possibility of Degruel's betrayal was not zero. Ultima, although not knowing the full details, was able to deduce a few things. According to legend, the Mad King of the Giants had once wreaked havoc, nearly destroying the world, and was sealed away by Veldanava-sama. With this in mind, Ultima began her investigation upon arriving in barren land, looking into whether Degruel had betrayed Rimuru-sama. She found a clue: Degruel was said to have 2 brothers. However, he had only introduced one, his brother Glassord. Ultima believed the missing brother was the key. The powerful presence she sensed now felt similar to both Degruel and Glassord, undoubtedly indicating it was the other brother. With meticulous thought, Ultima displayed a fearless smile. On the other side, Veyron followed orders to reach Degruel's location to confirm what had happened. As soon as he entered Heaven Tower, he was met with a cacophony of wailing and screaming. Heaven Tower, a colossal structure piercing the sky and acting as a bridge to the Star Palace. For those without the key, Heaven Tower was the sole passage to the Star Palace. The tower itself was a divine fortress, protecting its inhabitants from any enemy attacks. However, It had now become a battlefield. The presence descending from the Star Palace was familiar. It was the aura of a giant, which unsettled the giants residing there. Although they were collectively known as giants, their lifespans and abilities varied greatly among individuals. The oldest individuals had no lifespan limitations. However, to prepare for the possibility of death in battle, the oldest bodies would pass their memories and powers to successors, resulting in generational changes. Successor individuals or those who had already transitioned would have limited lifespans, but each generation would outlive the previous one, with the newest generation already having lifespans of several hundred years. In terms of abilities, the ancient individuals possessed powers comparable to gods. Giants typically had massive bodies ranging from 2 to 2.5 meters in height, but they could swell to several times that size during combat. As the oldest individual, Degruel's warrior form would be more than 10 times his normal size, meaning he could exceed 20 meters in height at his maximum. Among the giants, the only one who could rival or even surpass Degruel was his irrational and emotionally uncontrollable brother, Fen. However, Fen had been sealed in the Star Palace, while Degruel was responsible for guarding the Heaven Tower, the passage to the Star Palace. This was the reason why giants had not left this place, despite the heavy magical pollution caused by Melim and Gi's battles. Of course, we have emphasized multiple times that there was more than one way to reach the Star Palace. Another method was possessing the key to the Star Palace's gate, and the keyholder was Veldanava's sister, Velzard. Degruel had known this for a long time. With Velzard under Michael's control, the current situation was not entirely unexpected. Just a few days ago, Degruel was in the upper levels of the Heaven Tower, overlooking the lower levels. He suddenly recalled the recent Walpurgis banquet, where the demon lords, each considering their own positions, repeatedly voiced their claims without much coordination, yet somehow managed to reach a consensus. What left an even deeper impression was Demon Lord Rimuru. Utilizing the magicules present in the atmosphere, Rimuru had created a magic circle capable of transporting troops across different regions. For the giants living in a perilous land, this was a lifesaver. The giants were not immortal beings who didn't need food and drink. Their massive bodies required a corresponding intake of energy. Moreover, food couldn't be transported via magic circles. To import food from other countries, young giants had to become travelers, repeatedly crossing the harsh desert. This was the reality, or perhaps the curse of the barren land. However, with this large-scale teleportation magic circle, they could be freed from this curse. Degruel couldn't help but marvel at Rimuru's ingenuity. The worries that had plagued Degruel thousands of years seemed to be easily solvable by Rimuru. Degruel had always planned to attack the neighboring country of Luminous, but with this solution, there would be no need to start a war. Just as Degruel was admiring Rimuru's wisdom, a voice suddenly echoed in his mind. It was Feldway. Feldway mentioned it had been a long time, and that he was glad to see Degruel in high spirits. This was also something Degruel had anticipated. Degruel politely responded to Feldway, expressing that he was pleased Feldway considered him a friend but emphasized their opposing positions. Feldway, slightly disappointed, stated that he wanted Degruel's help in reviving the creator god Veldanava. Degruel firmly declined, stating he had no interest in this. He did not resent Veldanava for sealing his berserk brother, Fen, and had not forgotten the land and care Veldanava had granted the giants. From Degruel's perspective, he didn't have a good relationship with Feldway. On the contrary, he felt anger towards Feldway, for the control Michael had over his dear friend Dino, so Degruel decisively refused the request. Feldway attempted to provoke the hot-tempered Degruel, trying to steer the negotiation in his favor by suggesting that he hadn't expected the mighty rebellion giant god to become so tame after becoming a demon lord. In ancient times, during the era of gods, the mad king of the giants was sealed for challenging the Star King dragon, Veldanava. In reality, Veldanava split the mad king into 3 entities, which were Degruel and 2 his brothers. The uncontrollable Fen was then sealed away. Degruel and his brothers, known as the tyrannical kings who brought destruction to the earth, had terrifying super-destructive power that turned vast lands into scorched earth. However, after submitting to Veldanava, these once most fearsome destructive gods became subdued. They led a quiet life, faithfully guarding the Heaven Tower, but their nature did not change. Even with their powers sealed by Veldanava, Degruel's rage was still known as the Wrath of the Earth. Feldway believed that Degruel would easily fall for his provocation. However, Degruel stated that things were different now. He surprisingly had hope for the future. Degruel said that this change was thanks to Rimuru, and he could not betray Rimuru. Degruel then unilaterally declared that the next time they met would be on the battlefield before cutting off the communication. Returning to the present timeline, Degruel understood that the current chaos was a direct result of his refusal to join Feldway. Glassword remarked that Feldway had become deeply obsessed, making this outcome inevitable. Listening to their conversation, Veyron realized that Degruel had been in contact with Feldway privately, and questioned if Degruel had betrayed them. However, Degruel did not hide anything and admitted that today's chaos was the result of his refusal to betray Rimuru. When Ultima arrived, she instantly understood Degruel's intentions. He had deliberately left clues in his words, hoping that Rimuru would understand the private feud between him and Feldway and be able to provide support for Feldway's attack. Degruel praised the clever Ultima, noting that it was fortunate that the support came from Primordial Purple. He commented that if it had been Primordial Yellow, Carrera, who often acted before thinking, internal strife might have already broken out. Ultima expressed her confidence that Rimuru-sama's wisdom had already discerned the deeper meaning behind Degruel's words, believing that Rimuru-sama had foreseen the current situation and that support would arrive soon. Thus, Degruel and Ultima, though misunderstanding Rimuru, were highly motivated and ready to face the impending battle. Alright, that's all for this video. Some of you might feel that since the start of the Tenma Great War, the power levels in this story, like many others novels or mangas, have experienced significant inflation. For instance, Reiner, who previously couldn't even gauge the basic strength of the Monster Federation, suddenly has 2 million existence points. Not to mention his subordinates now range from 200,000 to 500,000 existence points. Well, this is common in Isekai novels, and what I recommend is just enjoying the story as it unfolds. In our next episode, we will switch perspectives to Milim's side, where the Insectoids will launch a massive attack on her country. How will Milim respond? The next episode promises to be just as exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.